Hi, welcome to KJ and Tony Move to France. In today's video, we are answering your questions that you have left for us, and we're also going to be sharing information with you on cost of living in France, because that is a question, or types of questions we've been asked in the past have often been related to how much things cost, how much our apartment costs. And although, like we shared in our last video, I think we talked about it briefly, that it really depends upon your lifestyle and what you're looking for, we are going to provide you today with averages. So the average cost of a family of 4, and we're even going to get a little bit into food and apartments and so forth. So stick around for the end of the video because we will be sharing that with you as well. So with that said, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. Okay, first question. And again, these are questions from our viewers. So this question is, how easy or difficult are you finding living in France with limited knowledge of the language?
For me, it's been easy, and I'm very limited. I don't speak French virtually at all. But I find that if I am gracious, I try to be gracious with people, they help me. And one of the things that I've seen is many French people, if you ask them if they speak English, they say just a little bit. And because of the way that they're pretty humble as a people, a little bit means they speak quite a lot.
Usually.
Usually, yes.
Usually.
And then they help me through it. And so I have not had a problem. I've been ordering in restaurants. I've been in stores. I've talked to people. No problem at all. Sometimes they giggle about the way I try to speak, but that's okay. I'm the newcomer here, not them.
And for me, I'm trying, and I think it's important that we clarify your comment that you made in the last video where you talked about the language police.
In retrospect, my comment didn't have to do with anything, any French person saying something. It had to do, our son and the three of us were out shopping, and my son and I went off shopping by ourselves, and he was talking to me, and a Brit walked by him and berated him about his English ability, and just kept on walking. And I think that's more where my comment came from. By the way, I'm British. He's a Brit. My father was born in England. My grandparents on my mother's side were born in England. I've lived in England. So I'm as Brit as almost somebody who was born there.
So he's not attacking British people.
No, not at
he's
all.
just stating the facts.
Yeah,
I wasn't there. You and Piers were.
Well, honestly, he's a kind of a freakish looking guy. Not exactly someone who you would expect to be correcting someone's English.
Right. So it was just a little bizarre. And that's what he was referencing when he said the language police. He was actually talking about someone who was criticizing Piers's English, not his French. So anyway, I thought I wanted to clarify that for some people that might have taken it as we don't appreciate. I appreciate very much any and all help from people who are trying to help us with our language
Every
skills.
time I go in a new restaurant, I run into the possibility that the people in the restaurant might not speak English at all. It happened yesterday. It was the only restaurant open because it was a freezing cold day here. And it was Sunday afternoon. A lot of restaurants here close between 2 and 6:30. And it was about 3:30, as I recall. It's the only restaurant open. And I almost don't know what I ordered. But when I got home, I had the things that I ordered, that I wanted when I went there. So somehow we worked it out, and it was not an unpleasant experience. So am I struggling with it? Not really. It occurs, but I'm accepting it, and I'm the person who is
the foreigner.
the foreigner and at fault if there's a fault, And so I have to either be gracious about it and ask for help, or I have to be a jerk, and I choose to be gracious.
Well, and I think I was just going to say, I think that the key word here is gracious.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you're gracious and you're kind and you're keeping in mind that, like we are, that I'm the foreigner and that they're being nice in attempting or knowing English. And I think that when you try, like you know the basics, like
Sure.
you know the greetings and all of that. And so when you're trying, I think that they appreciate that. But as far as running into difficulty, no.
We have a restaurant we just went to for lunch today.
Yeah.
Where the first time you went in, it wasn't with me. Was I sick, or I forgot why?
It was when Piers first arrived.
Right.
I think it was his first day here, and you were sick.
Right.
When he got
And so
here.
I didn't go out, and you and Pierce went out, and you had a bit of a tough time because of the time that you got there. He was closing after the lunch rush. And you thought it was a little bit brusque. But we kept going back, and now we're very friendly with them. And in fact, the waitress there speaks English very well, and she's just a delight to work with. And so we go there 3 times a week?
Yeah.
Probably 3 times a week.
And half the time, I mean, she's not always there, so sometimes, like, he's just there, generally in the evening, and we haven't had a problem. I mean, he doesn't speak English, we don't speak much French, but we manage.
Sure.
We're able to figure it out. And one thing that I'd just like to add to that, in case people are unaware, is that something that we've had to get used to is that most businesses close after lunch. They're open until about 2 or 2:30, and then they completely close, and they open again at like 6:30, 7 o'clock for dinner. And so that sort of like ties into the cost of living, because as I was researching, by the way, information about the cost of living, because I wanted to provide as accurate information as I can, it talks about how even though France is more expensive than some, but not, all, like it's, there's definitely, there are definitely countries that it is less expensive than, but that the quality of life here is so much better than in most other countries, certainly compared to the US.
And somewhat like the US, if you're comparing France and you're comparing Paris, that's 2 completely different things. Paris is in a completely different level, just like New York is in a different level than Iowa or Kansas. So when you're talking about the second most expensive city in the world, certainly that's going to skew things. It is more expensive to live here, but you have to plan. You have to have a budget. You have to think about what you want your life to be. And we came here for the lifestyle, for having a good, relaxed, happy life.
And by the way, according to the research that I found, it's not the second most expensive.
Well, I think there's a lot of
country in the
different, not country, city.
Oh, city.
Yeah. What I read, Tel Aviv was number 1, and Paris was number 2.
Well, because according to the research I found, Paris is actually less expensive than New York City. It says that Paris is less expensive than New York. So I guess it just depends upon the research, but we'll get into more of that in a little bit. We've spent how long now on the first question?
Certainly, there is some direct comparisons between Paris and New York.
Yeah.
The cost to park here is like the cost to park in New York. You have to buy a parking space if you're going to have a car long term. The way to get around here is mass transit, not by driving. So, the apartments in Paris are postage stamps, just like there are a lot of
like
studios and lofts in New York. So that's a cost of living thing.
And we'll be giving you more specific information about that towards the end. But we have to move on because that was only the very first question.
We've only taken 13 minutes.
I'm going to edit this down. I think we'll see. All right, moving on to question number 2. Well, this next question, there are a few that are tied together. So there's one that talks about how is learning French coming along. And then there's another one that says, do you feel you have to live in a country in order to learn the language? So French is coming along slowly. I think it's important to understand that when even children, like infants, learn a language, it takes them about 5 years to become conversational. And so to think that you're just going to take a course or you're just going to listen on YouTube and you're going to be able to become conversational in a short period of time is very unrealistic. And so that's been helpful for me because I have a tendency to put a lot of pressure on myself to achieve and to master things and to do things quickly. And so comments of people who actually teach the language and have a lot of experience have really helped me in terms of recognizing and understanding that it's going to take time. But also the more that you're conversational with people who speak the language. So that's why I think living in the country of the language you're trying to learn is key.
I think that's
and you'll learn
key.
it faster.
Yeah, I think that's key. But also something that another listener said, I think it will get you ahead even more. Many Americans come to another country and look where expats live, right? So that they can live with other Americans or Brits because of the language.
Right.
This person suggested you should look for a place that there aren't expats, which will force you to learn the language quicker. That's the way I learned Italian, being in areas where I didn't speak the language and everybody else spoke Italian, so I had no choice but to listen and pay attention.
And that's what I would prefer. I would prefer to be in an area and in an atmosphere and a situation where I'm exposed to more people who speak French than English, because that's even been pushing me in terms of motivating me and encouraging me. Being in Versailles, where there's not as many people that you'll find who speak English, has been motivating me to work harder and to study more in terms of learning the language.
Sure.
So the answer, the long and short of that is yes. I believe that. Do you absolutely need to be living in the country? Maybe not, but it certainly helps you to progress in your language skills a lot faster.
I think by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. So next question is, can you continue to live in France indefinitely?
That's our intent. Can we?
I hope so.
That's the way we budgeted. That's why, we're not living in an expensive home like we lived in the United States. Our goal is to live here the rest of our lives. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that happens.
And our visa is a multiple renewable visa. It's a retirement visa, and those are one of the easiest visas to be able to obtain is the retirement visa. And as far as we understand, we're able to renew that. But we are learning as we go along in terms of like what the pros and cons may be in terms of becoming an actual resident of France. So we'll have to report on that in the future because we're still learning. Okay, next question. What do you love so much about France compared to other places like Italy? What makes France stand out from other places that you've been? That's a good question.
That's a great question.
I mean, all the questions are good questions, but
first of all, I love all the countries around the Mediterranean. I love Italy, I love Spain, even going up the Iberian Peninsula, I love Portugal. And of course we love the south of France. The reason we started by loving the south of France, we were on a cruise that stopped in Saint-Tropez. That was in 2012. And on that cruise, we fell in love with Saint-Tropez. And I said to KJ, wouldn't it be great if we could retire here? And that was the first kind of thought. We love the lifestyle of all of Western Europe, where it's more laid back and a great place to retire. We like the warmer weather in the southern part of France, of course. So that's why being around the Mediterranean is important to us.
But that doesn't mean that we are closed off to where life may bring us.
And if there's one thing that you can see in the way that we're doing this, is that we're not planning 6 months down the road. you know, we're going to Nice and then Saint-Tropez. When we're in Nice, we're likely to go to Milan for a long weekend. We're likely to go to Geneva for a long weekend. We may fall in love with those places. Probably not Geneva because you hate the cold weather, even though it's a beautiful country.
I dislike the cold weather. Strongly.
But, you know, if you go southwestern France and into Spain, the weather's beautiful there and the countryside is beautiful there. So we're open to pretty much anything. Being that I do have an English background, at some point I'm sure we're going to go to England for a period of time, but not likely to stay there really because of the weather. If we were to go back to the question about language, if language was something we were afraid of, we'd just go to England.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like this has more to do with where we're going to settle, because certainly I don't dislike the cold enough not to want to go and visit places like Geneva. It's a matter of, would I want to live there? Would I want to live there full time? So just like Versailles, beautiful town, especially for families, wonderful quality of life here. But just like Paris as well, I'm not too crazy about the amount of time that it's cold. So would I want to live there full time? That's still up in the air, mostly because of the cold weather, because I'm just not used to it. It's a totally different, you know, lifestyle and way of living when it's cold. So that is really the one deterrent for me when it comes to actually settling in Paris. And so another question, this kind of like ties into it, I think, is the question that says, if this is a spiritual experience, which it absolutely is, do you feel like you're being led to a particular place? And so for me, I'd like to answer that first because it kind of ties in to talking about what's so special about France and being led, like allowing life to kind of lead us where it is that we're meant to be. The biggest struggle for me, and why I think it is very spiritual in nature, is the temporary nature of going from place to place to place. So my desire to want to nest and settle and be comfortable and have all of my comforts of home, and I know this is going to sound a little silly perhaps,
or whiny.
But there's this blanket that I had at home that I loved, and it was like my blanket that I used on the couch. I mean, don't look at me like that. It's true.
I never saw the blanket. I don't know what she's talking about.
If I showed it to you now, a picture of it, you would know. It's the one that Jen gave me that had the little fluffy balls on it, the beige one. Anyway, I love this blanket, and I didn't bring it because it's heavy to pack it in. There was no room to pack the blanket. But little things like that, like the blanket, and you know, certain like comforts of home, I miss that and I struggle with that. But the benefits, like the adventure and the experiences that we are having, far outweigh those times where I'm feeling a little sad or I'm missing certain comforts from home. I mean, we're getting to experience a lot of different places. So for me, spiritually, yes, it's difficult, but all of my spiritual growth has not happened during moments of comfort. They've always happened during moments of discomfort. So I remind myself of that when I'm struggling.
And I think that's the way it often is, right? And so for me, the fact that we have a budget is the only planning we've really done here. Everything else, that's the spiritual part for me, in that whatever it is that drives us to say, let's go to some small town. One of the ones we've talked about is Cotignac. Let's go to Cotignac. And okay, I pronounced it wrong. There you go. Does that answer your question?
Now I've become the language police.
So, well, you know, the fact that we can just say, yeah, you know what, we'll do that and go there for a month. or we'll go to Menton for a month, or we'll go to Milan for a month. To me, that's the spiritual part of being able to do whatever we want.
And I'd like to add one more part to this spiritual conversation, only because you're going to start to notice it. Like if you are someone who watches our channel and is following our journey, you are going to start to notice this. I am allowing my hair to grow out to its natural color because I am so tired of the constant battle of having to dye my hair. And back when we were living in the US, if you're a female, you know, having that hairdresser that you can trust and that you can rely on, that, you know, finally masters the color that you want, is really critical. I can't have that here because we're going from town to town to town. Even if I find someone that I love, I'm then moving to another place. So I started to do the box thing, and then I'm like, I was inspired by these women that I found on Instagram who allowed their hair to go naturally gray, or whatever color. I mean, gray, it's going to be, like you can see here, I'm gonna show you. I've been doing this zigzag because it's starting to grow in. Tony and Piers do not think that I'm going to make it. They have no faith in me whatsoever.
There is zero chance. Maybe we should put that as a questionnaire. Will she really do it?
Will I?
No chance.
If you think that I'll be able to do it or not do it, leave us a comment and let us know. I am 100% committed to, I want to see what it looks like. Will I eventually maybe dye it again? Sure. But I want to go through the process of letting it completely grow out so I can see exactly what I look like with my hair. I think my hair is going to thank me because I have such like fine, thin hair that it's going to be like healthier than it's ever been.
As we film this, it's January 23rd. I say the over-under is 1 month. Okay. And a month from now, we're going to be sitting here and her hair is going to be done.
No. It's not going to happen. You're just going to gradually see it like getting darker and darker. Yes. Yes, I am. I'm telling you that is.
No chance.
Okay, we'll see.
None.
We'll see.
Go to
I'm
Vegas
going
and
to
put your money on the
grow
under.
old gracefully. I will.
Okay. I'm not saying you won't grow old gracefully.
My hair is going to be like beautiful, beautiful white and gray like yours is.
Okay.
All right, we'll see.
Whatever makes you happy.
Next question. Moving on. Oh, this is a good question. Would you have gone to live in France by yourself if you weren't married?
No. No. That's me. My answer is no. We haven't talked about this, by the way, before right now, but my answer is absolutely not.
I thought your answer was going to be yes. I thought you were going to say, oh, absolutely, I would have done it by myself.
It's all about us being together.
Yeah. I honestly don't believe that I would have gone by myself either. And what's interesting about that is that there is a viewer who emailed me and told me about how she moved, if I'm remembering it correctly, she moved from California to Italy. And she talked about that transition, how she prepared for it for years. And I was really impressed about the fact that she was able to do that by herself. And she talked about how lonely it can be and the difficulty of learning the language and all of that. But I'm really impressed that, you know, she would pick up and be able to go and do that on her own. I don't think that that's something that is easy to do on your own, but there are plenty of people that do it. I know that there are viewers right now who have been sending us emails about how they plan on doing it themselves. I'd like to think that I would be able to do it myself, but I don't think that I would. I think you have to have a really, really strong relationship with yourself to be able to do that. You really do, though.
Yeah, but you have to think about what is our whole purpose here. Our whole purpose is to retire together somewhere we want to be.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't come to France by myself if I didn't have someone to share it with. So some of my best experiences since I've been here is exploring by myself and then coming back and telling you about it and then taking you to it.
Right.
Right? But walking along the Seine as an example. Standing in front of Notre Dame at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night when you don't expect there to be people there and it's swamped with people. There's all kinds of experiences like that that have to be done with somebody. It's like, I wouldn't even consider it.
Well, and I think that a part of answering that question for yourself, like if that's something that you're considering, is what is it that you're looking for? You know, what is your motive? What is it that you're seeking to get out of that move or that experience? Like why? Like why are you making that decision, and why do you want to change your life in that drastic way?
And I think if you're alone, there's always going to be down times where you start to question why you did it.
Right.
You know, I've not had one moment where I've questioned why we did this.
Yeah.
Not one.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to the next. Well, I answered this one to the person who asked it, but they asked if Ubers are readily available in Versailles. Ubers are readily available everywhere we've been so far. So in Versailles, in Paris.
Sure. We went to the mall last week. We took an Uber. We've gone to the airport. We took an Uber. In Versailles, we've taken Ubers everywhere. That being said, trains and buses, we haven't used buses, but there's buses everywhere. And a lot of them are, by the way, electric buses. But getting around is not hard at all.
And we had a viewer share with us the City Mapper. Is that what it's called?
Yes, City Mapper.
City Mapper app. It's a green app that you can download. Fantastic.
Yeah, and it's free, and it'll tell you everything about getting, even if you get lost somewhere, there's a key to get me home.
Right.
So it's a great app.
And the one thing about using Uber as compared to taxis, or if there are still taxis, right?
I haven't seen them in Versailles, but they're all over Paris.
But the one thing about using Uber is that because you're putting where you want to go into the app, everything's taken care of. Even we've had Uber drivers the last couple of times who haven't spoken any English. And it hasn't been a problem because they know where we want to go. We don't have to get in and say, oh, this is where we want to go.
Absolutely.
They have it all on the app, and we don't even really need to be communicating with them. So it's super easy to get around, even though we don't use Uber very often because we're walking. We're getting our exercise.
We're getting our exercise, but it's it's a budgetary thing too.
Yes. Okay. Next question. Oh, somebody asked if you need to report Wise to the IRS. So Wise is the account that we use. That is the I said intermediary before, which is somewhat accurate, I think. But this interim account. What's great about Wise is that you save on all of these fees that you can get charged if you're using your bank account or your credit card in a foreign country, because like I shared before, you can set up these different currencies and it just pulls it directly out of that account without getting constantly charged these fees. And the fees to transfer from your bank into Wise, and then you can also use Wise, by the way, to then transfer into whatever bank account you open in France or wherever you're going. And so we don't have to report our bank account to the IRS, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the only thing you have to report is when you take lump sums of $10,000 or more out of the country.
Right. That
you have to report. Just like if you go to an American bank and you take a lump sum of more than $10,000 out, the bank reports it. So there's that number that you don't cross, and it's in a lump sum. So it's not been a problem.
Well, then I also think too, if it depends how you're using it. I know that some people use a Wise account for income, to receive income, and we don't use it for that. So if you were receiving income, obviously you need to report that to the government. But I think, like Tony said, it really depends on, just like any other bank account, it depends on how much money you're transferring. All right, I think that's it in terms of the questions. We're going to move on now to the cost of living information. So I'm just going to grab my computer here. First thing that I'd like to share are some estimates that I found, because you get varying information. Like if you Google this information, you know, one report will maybe be from 2018, and all of the information that I gathered, the most recent has been 2021 information. And
about that, one of the things that somebody in the government did explain to us is that sometimes there are subtle changes to laws. And what it tells you online might be 2008, 2018, 2020, 2021, but maybe there was a subtle change as of January 1st, 2023 that does affect you, but it might not affect you. You have to just be on top of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and these are averages too. So the average may vary widely depending upon where you are in Paris, let's just say, what arrondissement you're looking to rent or buy. So according to this company called Numbeo, in 2021, it estimates that a family of 4 needs around 3,000 euro a month, which doesn't include rent, by the way, and that if you're single, you'll need 800 euro a month plus rent. And then according to a company called Mercer's, they say that the cost of living in Paris is ranked as number 33 in the world, and that it's more expensive than Amsterdam, Munich, and Brussels, but it says that it's cheaper than New York, London, and Zurich. And that if you're comparing like Paris to other major cities in France, the cost of living in Lyon is ranked as 100 in the world, and it's the 3rd largest city in France, so it's less expensive to live in Lyon. And then Marseille is also less expensive than Paris. I think Paris ranks number 1 in terms of all of the cities within France. But what's interesting about Marseille is that it's one of the most international cities in France, in that over 21% of the people who live in Marseille were born outside of the country of France. And then housing costs. So if you look at housing costs, I'm going to share, this is from Mercer, but I'm also going to share some other information with you. And by the way, I've put together an entire cost of living in France PDF that you can download. I've included a link in the description and gives you a ton of information. Hopefully you'll find that helpful. But according to Mercer, it says that housing costs in Paris for a 1-bedroom are upwards of 1,800 euro a month. And if you compare that to Lyon, it's between 600 and 1,200 euros. So that's a big difference. And then in Marseille, Marseille is about similar to Lyon in that it's between 600 and 1,125. And then if you're looking, it didn't give 3-bedroom for Paris, but it said if you're looking for like a 3-bedroom in Lyon, it would be between 1,250 and 3,000 euro.
Wow.
Okay, so this spreadsheet that I put together for you relative to the cost of living in France, I won't share the whole thing, but I'll give you some highlights, and then you can go ahead and download the entire PDF for yourself if you'd like. So according to, I think this is from Expatica, it says that a family of 4, the estimated monthly cost for a family of 4 is 41.85 euro. So if you compare that to the previous report of 3,000, I would say that you're looking at like 5,000 euro probably. And then it gives you this ranking, which the way that this ranking works is that it uses, I don't know why, but it uses Prague as like a
benchmark.
As a benchmark. And so it uses Prague as like a benchmark of 100. And that if you're comparing, let's say Paris against Prague, the index is 154. Okay. Which means
it's 50%, 54% higher.
Higher than Prague. And it lists all of the different cities, not all of them, but it lists a good number of cities like Paris, Lyon, Nice, Bordeaux, Marseille, Grenoble, and Paris is the highest.
And as you look at the list, if you download it, you'll see that Paris is head and shoulders above, right?
Yeah.
The next closest one I think is Lyon, and it's only 22% higher than the benchmark.
The benchmark of Prague.
And it goes down from there. So Paris is clearly more expensive than any place else. And in fact, when we get on the train to go to Paris, it's full of commuters who live here because it's much cheaper to live in Versailles than it is in Paris.
Right.
But they can make good money in Paris and just take the train in.
Right. Which is, I mean, you compare that to New York, it's
happens all over
similar.
the world. Yeah.
Right. And so just to name a couple that are down towards the bottom of the list, Toulouse, which I think is what makes Toulouse very popular for many, is that's 107.
Right.
So that's down towards, and
Strasbourg.
Strasbourg is down at 107. Okay, so average food cost. So in this PDF, in this document that I put together for you, I give you a list of a ton of different foods in terms of like lunchtime, what it costs for cheese, what it costs for a dozen eggs. So let's just say a dozen eggs the average cost is about €4.21. And it gives you average housing costs in France. So for your monthly rent, and this is just average for France, average monthly rent for 85 meters squared, which is 900 square feet, furnished accommodation in an expensive area is €1,819. So that's an average. And then the monthly rent for 85 meters squared furnished in a normal area, I don't know, they don't really explain what the difference between normal, like I would love to know what the definition of normal is, normal versus expensive, is €1,677. And then it lists also things like utility for 1 month average is €141. And then it also gives you information for like 45 meters squared. What is the difference between 45 meters squared? Internet, so $24 a month average for internet. Talks about how, what an average microwave costs, laundry detergent, hourly rates for cleaning help, average cost of clothes in France. This is interesting. So a pair of jeans, and it lists Levi's or something similar, which we saw Levi's at Montparnasse and at the mall here. So Levi's is a big brand here. It is €94 on average for a pair of jeans.
In the United States, that's probably half the price of that. And on sale even cheaper than that.
Yeah, clothing is very expensive here. I was very surprised, had no idea. Went to go buy some socks to have warm socks because I don't have very many socks living in Florida. I have a few, and mostly they're little like ped socks, for you wear with your sneakers. €15-20 for a pair of socks.
The one that got me was furniture. Furniture is crazy expensive here.
And then it goes into personal care, entertainment costs, 2 tickets to the movie, average €22. Dinner for 2 at a restaurant. It's interesting, it says here, I think this is because it's from Expatica. It says dinner for 2 at a restaurant in the expat area, including appetizer, main course, wine, and dessert. You're looking at €59 on average. Like I said, there's a ton of information in here that I think you'll find interesting.
And once you read this, there might be things that you have questions of other things that you'd like us to research for you. We'd be happy to do that. Please write to us in the comments section if there's something specific that you'd like us to research.
So check it out and download it. And if you have a question, let us know. And what else can we share?
Well, I think at this point, we may be giving you information overload, and it's better that if you just see the information in front of you and then see what you think, and if you have questions, let us know.
And I think that clearly, based upon our budget, it's going to influence where we choose to ultimately end up full time. Because even though I love Paris, despite the cold, I really love Paris, there's so much that we would have to sacrifice in terms of square footage and the cold weather and things like that. So all of those things are coming into consideration when we make our final decision relative to where we're going to end up.
The good news about if it's not Paris is that Paris is reachable from everywhere in France with a train system so easily.
Yeah.
So, you know, the furthest away that you could be is a 4-hour train ride. If you were in like Nice, there might be some that are a little bit further, but 4 hours is about as far as you can go. That's nothing. You can go there for a weekend easily. You could go for the day. I mean, it'd be a long day, but, you know, it happens. So, you know, the country's not that big.
So I have one final question, actually two.
Okay.
So I shared about what my biggest struggle is, right? If you remember, my biggest struggle being the temporary nature of going from place to place and not having the comforts of home, missing my blanket, those kinds of things. So what is the biggest struggle for you so far, aside from dealing with me and my struggles?
That's it.
No, I gave you that answer. That's not fair.
You know, honestly, I haven't struggled. The toughest thing for me to deal with is it's football season.
Yeah.
And last night the 49ers played at 12:30 at night here. So that's difficult.
Yeah.
That's not really much of a struggle, you know, in the whole scheme of things. It's cold, but I think I'm getting used to it. I mean, I'm the one that now is going out to get food. Of course, she's never going out, ever.
That's
May
not
1st,
true. Okay, you need to know the 89% rule. We need to share the 89% rule.
She's never going out.
The 89% rule is that 89% of what Tony says, it's not true.
That's nice. That's a nice thing to say about your husband.
We
She's
know
never going out.
Okay.
Don't forget to take the under on her dyeing her hair. The under.
All right. So what is your...
But to answer, you know, the cold would be the worst thing.
The cold, yeah. The cold it can be uncomfortable. So what's your favorite part so far?
Nothing is nicer for me than crossing one of the bridges across the Seine and looking towards the Eiffel Tower. And not that I'm looking necessarily at the Eiffel Tower, but it's the direction I'm looking at. And just watching the boats go by and the beauty of that. I love that.
Yeah.
There's other parts of Paris that I love almost as much, but that's my favorite part.
For me, it's the adventure. It's even though what's interesting is what is uncomfortable is also exciting. So the discomfort of going from place to place is actually a part of what's most exciting for me because we have no idea what's in store for us in Nice, and the excitement of having these new experiences and meeting new people and, you know, going new places, that's all very exciting to me. So I really love that. And
2 weeks from today, we're headed to Lyon, which ultimately will take us to Nice. We're going to stay in Lyon overnight. But we're looking forward to that.
So thank you so much for joining us today and for joining us in our adventure.
Yes, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and also to subscribe.
And don't forget to download your free PDF of the cost of living in France. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.